Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for Arkansas State. Joining us in just a few minutes will be Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. It's bounce back week, at least we hope it is. National media types and even a large segment of our fan base have already hit the panic button. Who knows, maybe they're right to panic, but the real question this week is, how does this Michigan team and the staff respond to last week's embarrassing loss? Was Texas as good as we think they are? If they are, that explains some of our struggles. Not all of them, though. We have a lot to clean up in a very short time. My advice is, let's see what happens against Arkansas State before we jump overboard on this season. There is a lot of football yet to be played. Defensive edge TJ Guy said what's needed this week from the team is resolve.
One of our teammates texted us in the group chat talking about, don't come to the building if you're not ready to put in the work and turn this ship around. So everybody's in. Nobody's going to run away from this. It's going to take resolve by the whole team.
Attention to detail was missing against Texas, according to Kalel Mullings.
It starts in practice each and every day. The details of everything have to be there. As we've seen this past Saturday, those can get you beat like that. I'm a big believer in the details, and I feel like our attention to detail let us down a lot Saturday.
Kalel said the veterans need to show the way this week for all of the younger players.
Making sure I'm the guy that everyone can look towards. Like you said before, there's a lot of people on this team that haven't lost and don't know how to respond to it or how to overcome it. And they're going to be looking to guys like me and the older guys on the team to show them the way.
At his Tuesday presser, Arkansas State coach Butch Jones shared his thoughts on Michigan.
They're a good football team. I mean, there's a reason why they won the national championship last year. They'll be one of the premier teams in the Big Ten Conference. They're well coached, have a lot of respect for their coaching staff and what they do. You know, there's plenty of challenges, but we have to control what we can control, and that's our effort, that's our fundamentals, that's our details, that's our mindset going into this game, all above. And then, you know, you just try to hang around. You just try to hang around and keep playing.
He also talked about his Michigan roots and his ties to the athletic department.
I grew up probably about 2.5 hours from Ann Arbor in a resort town called Saugatuck right on Lake Michigan. My father was the chief of police for over 35 years. My mom was the hospital administrator. You know, we go back there. We have a place there. My mom's still alive. You know, the whole town shuts down over the summer in terms of 4th of July. We go back. And everyone that's a business owner I went to high school with, very familiar with the University of Michigan. The best man in my wedding is an assistant AD there who's in charge of the big house and Chrysler Arena and all the sports venues. Obviously have a relationship with the chancellor, very good friends with the athletic director, a lot of guys on the staff, but you know, that only goes so far. You know, we're going there to play the game. We're into football, but we're in the business of winning.
My guest today says on paper this game should be a mismatch, but as the late great Bobby Ufer used to say, they don't play the game on paper. Joining us next is Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So don't go away. Joining us on our game day segment to take another look back at Texas and then ahead to Arkansas State is Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Good to have you back with us again, Chris.
Mike, thanks for having me, brother.
Well, it's a rough week for fans, for media, for everyone that covers the team. I know we want to turn the page on what happened last Saturday, but I think a lot of people are still a little bit numb, maybe a little spoiled after the last 3 years. And I've asked myself over and over since Saturday, is Texas really that good? And my answer is always, I hope they are, because there were a lot of red flags in that game from a Michigan perspective, weren't there?
Yeah, and we're going to find out. And I think they are a very good team. You could see up front how solid they were, and they've got great position players, a great quarterback in Quinn Ewers. So we knew they were good, but we expected more fight from Michigan. And I think the biggest concern here is how easy they made it look against this Michigan team that still has a lot of talent, number one, and a lot of guys who have played a lot of football. Now, everybody's pointing to the quarterback, Davis Warren, but the problems on offense really started up front. And Sharon Moore told us before the season, he said, as long as I'm here, we're going to have great lines, we're going to smash and everything else. But really looked like they had way too many mistakes, mental mistakes, on both sides of the ball. Linebacker play was bad. It was really the fundamentals and the lack of technique that gets you concerned here going forward. So now this is a team that, we've seen in the past. We've seen Michigan teams struggle in big games early and then right the ship. Lloyd Carr used to do it a few times. I go back to 1998 and 2007 when they turned it around, when everybody had them dead to rights. But this is not an experienced coaching staff, so Sharon Moore's going to have a lot of on his plate here trying to get this thing where it needs to be.
And you're right. A lot of the fan focus is where it's always going to be on that quarterback position. So Davis Warren's taking a lot of flack from a lot of our fan base. But if you've been around it, and we've been around it for a long time, a great offensive line can cover a multitude of sins and even make a game managing kind of a quarterback successful. But that offensive line through 2 games, are we overreacting? Watching you and Doug Skeen the other day on the Balas and Skeen show, these are things that can be fixed, so maybe we shouldn't get too crazy yet?
Yeah, I'm worried about a few things. But number one, the center position with Dom Jadice, and we all thought it was going to be Greg Crippen or Raheem Anderson, and these kids were highly recruited kids, 4-star kids out of high school. And then you've got a converted defensive tackle who was lightly recruited who wins the job, and you're thinking, boy, what's going on here? And you knew there were going to be some growing pains there at such an important position. And then right tackle as well, with Evan Link coming out of nowhere to beat Andrew Gentry when we'd heard such good things about Gentry and Jeff Percy on the right side, that they've got that experience. And to get beat out by a kid who really struggled against Texas. He really struggled the first game as well, but looked overwhelmed and overmatched both physically and mentally against Texas. And you cannot have that. You can't have a weak link on the offensive line. And right now they've got a few. And right guard, Gio Alhadi is a guy that Grant Newsome, Michigan's offensive line coach, told us last week would be in the NFL if he hadn't played behind Trevor Keegan. And right now he's having a hard time identifying the right guy to block. So it's just out of sync right now. And you've got a young guy in Newsome who's coaching them. He's 27 years old. And we know that Sharon Moore can coach offensive line. We've seen it the last few years. But, they had an elite coaching staff with Jim Harbaugh. And that's what everybody's thinking. Well, there aren't going to be any bumps. It's just going to be just one to the next and everything's going to be fine. And it doesn't work that way. When you have an elite football coach, yeah, they have a lot of guys left over, and Sharon Moore was part of that. But that was an elite staff. So hopefully they can get these guys where they need to be. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Sharon Moore was a little more hands-on with the line this week and going forward. There's certainly lots of room to improve.
You think maybe a change is due, at least for now, at right tackle? Because poor Evan Link, I wanted to close my eyes last week when we got to the second quarter. I mean, they were just skating around him, but you don't want to ruin the kid mentally. He's a young player, but it might be time for Gentry or someone else to give it a shot.
I think they need to. And, and here's the thing, right? We saw, I go back to 2004 when David Boss was playing guard and they moved him to center for the Big Ten season to shore it up, and it was fine, right? I go back to Miles Hinton last year being replaced, and you had it got better, right? So it can, and I think you've got to really, to me, when it's a redshirt freshman in there on the offensive line, it's usually somebody who's going to be elite going forward, right? I go back to John Jansen and Steve Hutchinson and Jeff Backus and Jake Long and guys like that. Mason Cole played early. Those guys all turned out to be NFL guys, and right now you're not seeing it with Link. I think he can be a good lineman in time, and he was heavily recruited, and but you know what? He's not getting the job done. You've got to do something different there. And we aren't in practice, right, Mike? So we don't know what's going on there. But at the same time, you just can't. If that's the best they've got, then they're really in a lot of trouble at this point. And that's not really an indictment on Link, but on the depth that we were told they had on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. So I think they got to switch it up. I think there's just too much at stake here, including the kid's confidence, like you said, to go forward with this lineup.
Well, let's talk about Davis Warren for a couple of minutes, Chris. Watching him, he's not J.J. McCarthy. We all know that. His struggles are tied to that offensive line to a great deal. But to me, he is the least of our problems right now because I think at times he's looked pretty darn good.
He has, and people don't want to hear it, right? Oh, he's just a walk-on. Well, he's only a walk-on because he had leukemia in high school. Otherwise, he would have been heavily recruited, and the kid's got the arm. You can see it. He did some things in the fourth quarter, and everybody's going to say, well, Texas called off the dogs. But the way he stepped up in the pocket, made some throws on the run, the one throw off his back foot was fantastic. A couple times he rolled out and surveyed the field. He looked really good when he wasn't asked to be robotic, right? It looks like the game plan is, okay, go to Colston Loveland when you can. If you get to your second read, great, but let's dumb it down a little bit for you. And when he played a little bit more freely there in the fourth quarter because he had to, he looked pretty good. And I can't tell you how much crap we got, Mike, during camp when we said, Davis Warren might be the guy, and everybody in camp is telling us that he's throwing better than Alex Orji. And I know that everybody wants Orji because of his athleticism and because the upside is tremendous if he can be a quarterback with his size and his athletic ability. But we kept hearing about Davis Warren, not that he was great, but just that he was better than what they had. And there's a reason that he's playing. So most of his interceptions aren't on him. Maybe a couple of them. The first one, obviously, in the first game against Fresno State. But and another throw where he threw into traffic, but this guy is improving, and you can tell that he's got some skill back there. If the guys around him that you were expecting to be better get better, including his receivers who have barely been struggling, then I think he can be a serviceable quarterback. I talked to Greg Harden, Michigan's former associate athletic director, golfing just several weeks ago, and he said, if you get a Brian Greasy type back there, and then I think you can be okay. Well, that's going to work if you've got the pieces around him, and right now they just don't.
Well, another thing that I'm sort of ready to say enough with already is the Alex Orji package and how they've used him. It just right now, the way they're using Alex doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
It doesn't, and it's not fair to the kid, right? Everybody's saying, well, that's all he can do. And, the first play that he had, the touchdown to Donovan Edwards in the opener, I thought, man, okay, if this is how they're going to use him and keep people off balance and everybody thinks they're going to run, and then all of a sudden he pulls it back and you've got Donovan Edwards for 6, that's fantastic. But it's clear that they don't trust him to throw the ball, number one. Otherwise, they would have let him throw the ball last year. He didn't throw a single pass, right, when he was even in backup duty. So that's a big issue. Number two, you're telegraphing what you're going to do with him now. And everybody, again, 2 plays that would have worked had guys gotten their blocks, but Gio El Hadi missed a block on his first third down and again on the second third down, where if he makes a block, then I think Alex Orji picks up first downs. But at the same time, you got the whole defense keyed on him and you make one little mistake and it blows it up. So to me, yeah, I think they got to put an end to that and understand that, okay, either give him a series, and if you're going to do it, give him a series and let's see what he can do. Otherwise, you got to stick with Davis Warren and give him more reps in practice, even to let him get his confidence up and get better. This kid has not played a lot of football, so I'm not sure what you do with Orji. Frankly, I understand that he's a great athlete, but not all great athletes are great football players, and he wants to play quarterback. It's very clear, but there's a reason that Jim Harbaugh was talking about him as a kick returner last year. Great athletes don't always equal great quarterback.
Yeah. Well, another concern for a lot of people is Donovan Edwards. I thought he ran hard inside the tackles, really I think he only had 6 carries in the game. But you think it's sort of time to realize maybe that's not what he does best, and he has to be utilized better and get the ball in space. And, maybe it's just me, but I think we've got to start using him the way God intended him to be used, Chris.
Yeah, and even with 2 backs in there, I think Khalil Mullings is a better pure running back between the tackles. I don't see the vision with Donovan Edwards. If you look at some of his carries, maybe there was a cutback lane early in that game where, boy, if he sees it, he might still be running.
Mm-hmm.
He goes down a little bit easier than Mullings. You expect him to make a safety miss, and he had one play on Saturday where I thought, boy, he's in the clear. You make one guy miss and you're gone, and needs to be able to do that. And he's a guy that if you give him a hole, boom, he hits it. He's explosive. He's gone, and that's great to have. But you need in an offense like this, it can't be hit or miss. It can't be 2 runs for 2 yards and then hopefully every now and then he breaks one. And we saw that with Blake Corum. He became that kind of a back where you could count on him to get that extra yard or 2 on first and second down. You cannot get in third and long with this offense, and we are seeing way too many third and longs with Donovan Edwards back there. So I would like to see more of Mullings. I would like to see more of Mullings and Edwards together, where you can maybe send Edwards out on some routes. And but I think Mullings has to be the bell cow running back for this offense. And again, it just is what it is. So we'll see what they do going forward with these guys. But, Donovan Edwards is a very talented football player, but I'm with you. They've got to find different ways to use him.
Well, I've watched the Texas game about 5 times now, and I have no idea why I do that to myself. But
glutton for punishment.
Yeah. But as critical as we were with the offense, there were times I think to myself, are we ever going to get the ball back for them? I mean, the defense, especially on third downs, and we sort of beat on that all week. That was mind-numbing to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't understand it because the linebackers they really did not play well. And you've got 2 linebackers there that they told us were good football players. We've seen them play good football. Ernest Hausman played some great football last year for Michigan as the 3rd leading tackler in a backup role. And Jayshon Barham, kid came over from Maryland, and all they've been talking about in practice is how physically gifted he is. And but they need to be better, and they were out of position way too many times. We saw way too many missed tackles, which is something we are not accustomed to in the last 3 years. You've got to be fundamentally sound, and these guys were all over the place, just out of position. The secondary, there was a lack of communication. We knew they were going to miss Rod Moore back there with his knee injury out for the year, but we didn't know how much. Those guys got lost sometimes. Jair Hill at the second corner. Texas had a great game plan. They knew what they were going to do and go right after him. They didn't mess with Will Johnson. They said, okay, let's see if we can find the weak links, and they did. So, but the biggest disappointment I thought was up front. I thought Texas got more push and did a better job against Michigan's front 4 than I really expected them to. I thought Michigan could be really disruptive. And again, this could just be Texas being that good, right? Like Georgia in 2021 when they neutralized Aiden Hutchinson, because they were just that good and that talented on both sides of the ball. And I think maybe that was part of it. So this defensive front, I think, will still overwhelm a lot of teams like we saw, frankly, against Fresno State when Mikey Keene was running for his life half the time. Against those teams like that on the schedule, they're going to be fine. But I think we're going to learn a lot about these guys against USC. To me, that is the game of the year here to determine which way this season's going to go. If you go 2-2 and you lose 2 games early, are you going to be able to keep these guys interested, right? Some of these NFL guys that are like, wow, and I understand it's about culture and these guys, but human nature is, hey, I got to protect myself too. And you hope it doesn't come to that, but boy, these guys are going to have to get much better under Wink Martindale, and that offense for USC is explosive. So let's see what they do against Arkansas State. This is a team that they should handle, but again, USC is the one that I'm looking toward.
Yeah, I'm looking ahead to that game too, but yet I still want to turn the page and welcome Arkansas State and Butch Jones to the big house. But I'm a nervous Nelly, especially even when we're winning. But this week I sat about watching the first two Arkansas State games. Granted, they were against Central Arkansas and Tulsa. I thought, hey, these guys aren't chumps like I would hope they would be. This is a team Michigan, though, has to dominate, don't they, Chris?
Yeah, and they're, a 21-point favorite or a 20-point favorite. Yeah. So, but Butch Jones has been around. He's a solid football coach. So they're going to come in here and they're going to know what to attack, and Michigan better show up. I don't expect them to give Michigan a game, but at the same time, if they come in here and they try to sleepwalk through this game and make some of the mistakes that they made in that Texas game, then they could be in for more of a fight. So, but they need to start doing the basics. I want to see them guys being lined up in the right spot. I want to see them not missing tackles. I want to see guys on the offensive line handling their assignments. There was a time when El Hadi pulled and ran into his center's rear end on one of the third down plays. Things like that can't happen. You got to clean them up to the point where you can say, okay, you know what? There weren't nearly as many missed assignments, because I go back to the Brady Hoke era when, I can't tell you how many press conferences you heard where they said, well, it's just one or two guys not, making a play, but it happened every game and it never got better. At some point, it's got to get better to the point where these guys are all on the same page and not making those mistakes. So it really starts this game. It's kind of like a season reset here where, okay, even if you have to dumb it down a little bit, we got to get guys doing what they need to be doing, and then go from there and improve on it.
Yeah, it has to be a reset because, as you alluded to just a couple of minutes ago, next weekend USC comes to town, and I would like to think we can clean up most of what we're seeing as far as mental errors and physical mistakes on the field, but in reality, it has to be cleaned up to hang with these guys, because this is a much improved team, and it's a USC that's actually playing defense this year.
Yeah, with a guy who learned from Wink Martindale as well. So, and Dan Tomlin. So they are better, but that offense is explosive, and the defense has got to be the bell cow for this Michigan team, right? And we said it. And in special teams, Tommy Doman at punter had a chance to flip the field in that game and gave him a short field with a 28-yard punt. That cannot happen. We thought that this was going to be kind of like a trestle ball team, right, where you played to your defense and you played to your special teams, and we saw that in week one. Against Texas, we did not. Those guys have got to be better. They got to get off the field on third down. They gave up far too many third and longs against Texas. They actually played pretty well on first and second downs, but you've got to get off the field. And Quinn Ewers, again, give him credit. That guy is fantastic. It's the best quarterback they will face this year. But we had high expectations for that group. And again, it comes back to the fundamentals. The coaches that I've talked to that said the linebacker play was just abysmal. Can't have it. They've got to be better there. They got to shore that up as well, and we need that defense to be as good as we thought it was before the season.
Well, when I had their radio guy, Arkansas State's radio guy, Matt Stoltz, on the other day, I made sure to say thank you for Dominic Zavada.
Yeah.
Hard to find positives after last Saturday, but he sure is one, isn't he, Chris?
What a stud. He's more Jake Moody than... It's funny, I talked to Brandon Kornblue, who has a former Michigan kicker, who has a kicking school, and he said, I don't think he's got the leg of a Jake Moody. Maybe he's more James Turner than Jake Moody, but I think it's just the opposite. And he's clearly improved since Kornblue saw him in high school. This kid hitting 50-yarders like they're 20-something yard chip shots. And I asked J.B. Brown about that during the week here of preparation for Arkansas State, and he said, we knew when he came in, the ball sounds different coming off his foot. He is just a cool customer when he gets out there, and just really no fear. And that's what you need from your kicker. And we said that was going to be huge going early on because we knew that there were going to be drives that probably stalled near the 35-yard line. They were going to need long field goals. He was a huge part of the Fresno State win and really had some huge kicks against Texas too. So he's going to have to continue that, but he is definitely frankly, the team MVP through 2 games here. And if they're going to win some of these bigger games on the schedule, I bet he's going to be a big part of it.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Chris, and this is sort of a big picture type of a question, but the last 3 years have been so very good for all of us, especially those of us who've been around a long time, decades, covering and watching Michigan football. And Saturday was, so disappointing on so many levels, more than a reality check. Should just one bad game, especially looking at what we have on the schedule in the next few weeks, should that reshape our expectations for this team right now, or should we still give it more time?
I think we will know more against USC, and but I think the expectations that we all had were like next year is going to be the really big rebuilding year, right? Because you've got four All-Americans on this team. You've got a lot of talent still on this football team, and we were told, we've seen it. Again, Josh Preeb was an All-Big Ten guy. You look at Gio Hottie, they said would have been, Grant Newsom said he would have been in the NFL if he hadn't been playing behind Trevor Keegan. You look at Miles Hinton, who they said could be a first-round pick, and we know that he's talented, right? And he's probably been their best lineman at left tackle. So there's too much talent here, in my opinion, to say, okay, they can't get better. But it's going to come down to the position coaches and coaching these guys to get the most out of them, because they did not do that against Texas. Is that an anomaly? I don't think it's just a matter of Texas being that good. I think it's a matter of Michigan being sloppy. I didn't see the leadership. I saw a little bit of finger pointing on the field on Saturday, and we know how good this leadership has been for the last 3 years with guys like J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, everybody. Just go right down the list. So they need those guys to step up. And one thing about Lloyd Carr teams, Mike, was when they got beat, they always rallied. And we're going to find out if they've got it, if Sharon Moore has got this. We've heard from inside the program, and he's like, all right, we got this. We're going to be fine. You know what? He's still confident in his guys, but the proof's going to come out, in my opinion, in 2 weeks, and we're going to figure out at that point what direction this season's going.
With us this week to discuss the Texas game, look ahead to Saturday's homecoming game with Arkansas State, has been Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Chris, always a pleasure to have you on the show, and we look forward to another visit soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Mike.
On Quick Hits today, no injury updates from Sharon and staff this week, so we appear to be in great health heading into Saturday. Here are a few game day notes of interest. This will be the first ever meeting between the two schools. Michigan native Butch Jones is 13-26 at Arkansas State in his third year at the helm. His overall record in 15 years of coaching is 97-80. Last year, A-State was 6-7 overall, 4-4 in the Sun Belt West. They returned 9 starters on offense, 6 on defense. Last year, they played in the Camellia Bowl and lost to Northern Illinois 21-19. They are 2-0 heading into this weekend's matchup. The weatherman says it's going to be a warm one this Saturday, sunny and humid with temps just over 80. Not much chance of rain, and the winds will be light. We've thought about the Texas game all week. It's just good to be able to tee it up and play again. I have no idea if last week was a blip on the radar screen or a sign there's trouble ahead. I know it's hard, but we might have to be patient with this team and let them find their way a week at a time. We need to see improvement on Saturday in every phase of the game. A lot of improvement. Because next week, USC comes to town, and they sure look like a very good team right now. Our scheduled guest on Tuesday's Visitors Edition is Pete Arbogast, the longtime radio play-by-play voice of the USC Trojans. On Thursday's Game Day show, we'll hear from Michigan beat writer Austin Meek from The Athletic. That will do it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Arkansas State. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!